heritage of slavery.
Every man, woman, and child in Mississippi can rationalize how they have always been friends to the colored man. All of a sudden they wake up here one morning and are told that what the way they've operated for the last 100 years is wrong. This is a hard thing to just tell a man that he spent his life doing something wrong. He doesn't have to believe it. And then all of a sudden, we're some kind of demon. If you live in Mississippi and run a cotton plantation, you're supposed to be some kind of demon. This is the national image of a cotton plantation operator in the Mississippi Delta.
Humphreys McGee owns a 2,500-acre plantation in the Mississippi Delta. His mother's family has been in the state for 7 generations. And on his father's side, the McGees moved to the Delta from South Carolina. Charleston was the elegant capital of Southern culture in the 19th century. Mississippi was the frontier. Attitudes hardened early. The old way of life has endured in Mississippi longer than anywhere else. Whites and blacks in the Delta look at the past from different angles, but it is a shared past.
See, the Civil War's over, and regardless of the evils of slavery, these people understood each other. It was not some sort of medieval torture for a person to be a tenant farmer on a plantation. And I don't know anybody that's ashamed of the system, the way it worked. It's an impossible system to return to. With that mechanical cotton picker, one man could do what 150 men had been doing. This was the crowning blow to this system. Everything's geared to machinery. Where I used to have 83 families on the plantation, I have 15 boys working machine operators. But I will say that the system we had was a system that, on the surface, developed a very outgoing, happy group of people. They're old people now, but these are the people that I grew up thinking I knew.
I work hard, he worked hard.
I worked hard. I'd get up at 4 o'clock, and get my breakfast done. Just at dawn of day, I go to the field and we pick cotton.
Mr. and Mrs. Haywood Jenkins of Sharkey County, Mississippi have, between them, picked cotton for over a century.
My boss man came along. He says, Mary Jane? I said, sir. I say, when you wash? I said, I washed last night. He said, I don't want you to do that no more. That's my agent, you know. He says, every Friday morning or Friday evening, you wash. And let all the children stay there with you until you get through. When you get through, then y'all can go back to the field and wait. Now, the agents was mean, some of them. Some of them was mean. They want to whoop the colored people. And that time, the white man come along. He says, hey, but you ain't in the field yet? He just had started applying. He said, yes, I've just not had to eat my dinner. God damn it, you ain't doing a goddamn thing. Says, God damn it, I ought to take this damn stick and frail the hell out you. He said, no, he said, if you frail the hell out of me, goddamn, I frail the hell out of you. It makes me feel bad if I was under them, you know, how mean they was to treat us like that. Oh, yeah,
in the frontier days, slaves begged not to be sent to Mississippi, where their work was almost as harsh as the overseers. Resistance was often subtle, but seldom absent. A runaway slave said that each so-called happy song was a testimony against slavery and a prayer for deliverance.
We're going to have to put some kind of a spout down on that corner. This system, in its best sense, was based on noblesse oblige by the landowner. But I don't have 83 families anymore that I feel like I'm the daddy of. I do not expect to ever have this relationship with the younger generation, the children of these men. They are oriented entirely differently. They grew up in the 50s. They're conscious of the change in the status quo. They are fairly confused about what their position is. They don't want to be subservient.
From when I saw my mother and father and my brothers do while I was growing up, I feel that I don't want any of my kids to go in a world like this, because I know some days I saw my mother slaving from 6 in the morning in hot sun, 100-degree weather, from pulling a hoe in a field from 6 until night, with about an hour's break between us all this time. And my father doing labor that machines wouldn't even be made to do hardly. Doing labor that bad. And I feel that if we've been working this long and can't even on the shirts on our back, I feel that we have to take some drastic steps to make something happen, to make a change come about, because Mississippi is going to either have to change or there can be no more Mississippi. And we have to do this in any means as possible. Through our parents, we've earned Mississippi. There's no question about it, brother. I mean, if my mother got there and sweated from morning until night, and you tell me I don't own anything she sweated on, I mean, how can that be? How can it be?
The white man does not want to give over his institutions, and that's what people fear that would happen. You just don't want to turn over the reins of everything and give up control. Who wants to give up control?
Awfully out. Okay, guys, get in the car. Let's go.
So white supremacy is undoubtedly a feeling that white people have all over the world. Of course, how the black man and the white man would live together has been the paramount concern of people ever since the Mississippi Valley was settled, especially when the greatest number were the black people. The problem is, I don't need the men I used to need.
Humphreys McGee can run his plantation with machines now, and the government takes care of surplus cotton. That leaves surplus people, and no one does anything about them. They cluster into shanty towns like this one in Cleveland, Mississippi, and they wait for something, almost anything, to happen. First as slaves, and then as tenants and sharecroppers, black Mississippians turned the Delta swamps into the richest plantation soil in the world. Now the soil and the crops no longer need the people. The mechanical cotton picker, an instrument of agricultural efficiency, became also an instrument of history. In many Mississippi counties, blacks have always been in the majority, which means whites have had a problem. If you've got the land and the money, but not the numbers, it's natural, as Humphreys McGee says, to want control. In Mississippi, white control has made the past hard to distinguish from the present. More than anyone else, the spirit of resistance to this control has been Fannie Lou Hamer. At the 1964 Democratic Convention, Mrs. Hamer was a leader of the attempt to unseat the regular Democratic delegation from Mississippi.
Mississippi is still a very rough place. You know, people is not just walking up like they used to do in the past, walking out, you know, shooting a man down or getting maybe 200 or 300 people carrying you out and lynching you, but it's in a more settled way. You know, they can let you starve to death, not give you jobs. These are some of the things that's happening right now in Mississippi. See, Mississippi is not actually Mississippi's problem. Mississippi is America's problem. Because if America wanted to do something about what has been going on in Mississippi, it could have stopped by now. It wouldn't have been in the past few years between 40 and 50 churches bombed and burned. You see, and this lead me to say, you know, all of the burning and bombing that was done to us in the houses. Nobody never said too much about that, and nothing was done. But let something be burned, you know, by a black man, and then, my God, you know. You see, the flag is drenched with our blood. Because, you see, so many of our ancestors was killed because we have never accepted slavery. We had to live on it, but we've never wanted it. So we know that this flag is drenched with our blood. So what the young people are saying now, give us a chance to be young men, respected as a man, as we know this country was built on the black backs of black people across this country. And if we don't have it, you ain't gonna have it either, because we gonna tear it up. That's what they saying. And people ought to understand that. I don't see why they don't understand that. They know what they've done to us. All across this country, they know what they've done to us. This country is desperately sick, and man is on the critical list. I really don't know where we go from here.
May I have your attention, please? Greyhound coach now loading on Maine.
Where many black Mississippians are going is north. Over 400,000 since 1950. What is finally breaking up the old relationships in Mississippi is not enlightenment, nor revolt, nor the civil rights movement. It's just machines. And when the machines came, many of the blacks had to go. What the past all adds up to is the present. Chicago is the present for as many as 1,000 black immigrants each month. The railroad isn't underground anymore, but the objective is still the same. Nobody seems to migrate anywhere without some combination of hope and bewilderment. After 300 years, the huddled masses are still looking for what eluded them in the South. Jobs, freedom, a different way of life. But the migration itself has created tensions and the polarization of attitudes.
Well, bigotry means that you believe in a creed, a cultural stem of life, a way of life, and this I do believe in. I believe that we have communities here we've developed in our country that we have to protect, and I believe a community way of life has been developed for 75 years, and I don't believe it should be broken up. And I think that this is the way we'll have to fight for it from now on in. It's going to be a community life versus those that want to come into it, and that's going to be rough. And if this means racism, it's going to be practiced on both sides.
So you're a practicing bigot, then?
I'm a practicing bigot. I believe in my way of life.
As far as I'm concerned, things are getting worse in America. I haven't seen where American did nothing for the black people. What have American did? They gave a few Negroes who had higher position a higher job. That's still not helping the grassroots. I'm in the grassroots. My little brothers around here are in the grassroots. My sister is living in the grassroots. She's still living in the grassroots. As a young black man, I feel that I have an obligation to my race of people. Not to no other race, or no other nationality, just to black people.
The south side of Chicago is not a nice place to visit, and it isn't easy to live there either. The situation is not new. Over 100 years ago, a brilliant black abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, escaped from slavery to come north. Douglass found that black people were already being crowded into large urban slums. Today, 85% of Chicago's black population live in ghettos. What the black man who leaves the South faces when he comes to Chicago is described by the Midwest Director for the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, John McKnight.
In the South, he knows who the man is, the man up there on the hill in the big white house. And when he comes to a city like Chicago, it's much harder to determine who that man is. Such a complex society. It's a different man who controls the house from the man who controls the job, from the man who controls the welfare, from the man who controls the hospital, from the man who controls the school. And I think what's happening is that he comes rather quickly to the conclusion that the man is all the white men. Not being able to discern his specific captor, he decides that all people with white faces are his captors. And to the degree that all white people are engaged in supporting the systems of separation and racist institutions that we have in the North, that judgment is basically accurate.
How do these institutions function in a racial way?
When we develop any kind of a system that by definition excludes people who are poor, inner city, limited education people, we are saying black only. We might as well put the sign back up because it's the same thing, same bag. The problem that we have in white America is that most white people, when they hear about white racism, most white people say, man, that's not me. I never discriminated against anybody. Never did. And in their sense of what discrimination means or what racism is, they may be right. But they sit residing in a system from which they take full benefit, a system that defines them in and defines black people out. We are going to have to face the fact that we are not a community. A community is where a lot of people develop mutually beneficial relationships with each other. And our racist institutions and the political boundaries of our cities define black people out of the community. White people will sit in their suburban homes and watch their television programs and hear about all of these laws that are being passed. Many of them are beginning to wonder, well, what is it with those colored people down there? Why are they so upset? All this wonderful stuff that we're doing for them. But we aren't focusing on the black man living on the block. He lives in a two-flat on that block, and he knows what the circumstance on that block was 10 years ago. And he knows what it is today, and he, too, has heard about all of those programs and laws being passed. But the hard fact of the matter is that things are not changing for him. It's no wonder that the white population and the black population are pitted against each other when the black man knows that the change is not coming, and the white man thinks that major efforts are being undertaken when they are not. So I don't think anybody should be surprised when one sees the black people in an open attack on the system, because I suspect that they don't see that there is any other realistic alternative.
James Turner, an instructor in political sociology at Northwestern University, also teaches a summer study group what black patriotism means to him. Denmark Vesey, the insurrectionist of Charleston, is Turner's lesson for the evening.
What Denmark Vesey did in Charleston, South Carolina, is very much related to Detroit and to Watts and to Newark. It is very much related to black men saying, tanks be damned, I'll have my freedom. The price of freedom is not cheap. Denmark Vesey was very mindful of this. So it's very important for us, the lessons of Denmark Vesey. A lot of us like to think that the effective thing is to woof at the man, to get up and blow our whole game to him. That somehow the revolution will come through oratory. The unique thing about Vesey is that he was a quiet man, which is often a mark of determination. Yes, sister?
How come this wasn't taught in our school?
I think that this is a very good question, why it is that Denmark Vesey doesn't stand beside Patrick Henry. Because they've never wanted us to come to the kind of position and the state of mind that those of us who are gathered around this table have come. Because Denmark Vesey released in his time, as he has done for us now, a whole force of black resistance and struggle. We have not been able to talk about, because they're nameless and faceless, the thousands of black people who fought in a more quiet way. Those black women who consigned to cook in the kitchens of the slave master, who ground up glass to very fine bits and put it in the master's soup. And then asked the master, "What's the matter, boss? You seem like you're not well." And the white man was tricked by his own notion that our people were just silly, as he bled internally to death. As well as the brothers in the field who set fire to the cotton. The brothers who set fire to the cotton when the master came with his whip and said, "Boy, what's going on?" "I don't know, master. Something's taking place strange." And the brother went on to burn more cotton. Black people have resisted, who have determined here today that we are going to free our people. Denmark Vesey is alive. Denmark Vesey is alive, and among the brothers, be they in Oakland, California, with the Black Panthers. Denmark Vesey is a young black man named Eldridge Cleaver and Huey Newton in Oakland, California. Denmark Vesey is personified by the courageous black brother named H. Rap Brown. Denmark Vesey is the guiding light that inspires and gives incentive to Brother Stokely Carmichael. Denmark Vesey was the father of Brother Malcolm X. Denmark Vesey walks the streets of the black community today. He is in the minds and the bosoms of young black men who stride now with pride and dignity in the black community, who say that they will no longer reside in the hell of the ghetto, but will struggle to transform their plight to a community. They will do it or die trying.
But there is a fever of revolution in America, and that's a black revolution. And the only thing that is hanging us up, which we must clear, we must sit down and continue to analyze and discuss what our particular role will be in the revolution.
Calvin Lockridge, a young ghetto leader, moves his training group toward confrontation with a system he finds oppressive. For Lockridge, the heritage of slavery is insurrection.
We talk about that all revolutions are led by a hardcore disciplined group. And I think this is where we have to start. We have to start organizing that hardcore disciplined group of people. And then we pyramid ourselves. And then we will move the masses of people around an issue when we are ready to move.
You have to have your own communications.
Well, this is how the rebellions during slavery was able to move to action. Is because of the fact that you had members of the revolution or the rebellion who would move and communicate through the black grapevine. Because you never knew how many people was actually involved, because it meant death if you ever found out.
A lot of Negroes, they might have thought that they were given a chance, but they weren't. There's going to have to be some bloodshed and a revolution somewhere.
I think that black people have always had a justification for insurrection, rebellion, revolution, whatever word you want to call it. We've been talking about guerrilla warfare.
Now you're saying that we should start preparing for guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare takes training. And I don't know of any black person around who has done any type of training to prepare himself for guerrilla warfare.
If one prepares himself for guerrilla warfare that you wouldn't know, I would hope no one would know. And
this is true.
Guerrilla warfare is not a training in the use of weapons, it's a training in the use of the mind.
There's a revolution going on. Anyone who doesn't join in, who is in the way, you treat him as a traitor or a spy. And doesn't sympathize with you, you can't help him. You have to treat him like a traitor or spy, that means you kill him. It's an American revolution. It's happening here on the American soil. and that black and white are caught up in the revolution, but blacks are spearheading the revolution.
Neither James Turner nor Calvin Lockridge could win any elections today. So far, they represent only a minority of a minority. Yet their potential constituency can be found on any sidewalk in any slum. Among youth and among black opinion leaders, even a minority is many thousands. The question posed by increasing black activism is, will white America respond before the few become the many? Chicago is 30% black, while less than 1% of the city's businesses are owned by black people. It is hardly a revelation that economic bondage produces social revolutionaries. The future may not work, but if you're black, neither did the past. The pressures that bring about rebellion are defined by the senior editor of Ebony magazine, historian Lerone Bennett.
Men fight when they reach the wall, not because victory is sure, but because their manhood demands that they act in this way. And therefore, I'm not at all sure what is the proper measure of success when you're talking about a rebellion of an oppressed people. One might almost say that it is normal for an oppressed people to revolt, and it is abnormal, really, for them to accept the oppression which is forced upon them. Any oppressed people, when they revolt really in the ultimate sense, even in the name of their oppressors, because they're reestablishing reciprocity between man and man, and they're reestablishing the bounds of humanity which must govern men if they're to live together in a common climate. I just ask you to visualize a room, you know, in which there are all the goodies of the world, all the material goodies of the world. And there are people in that room, and all those people are white, you see. And the door to that room is locked, and that room is in a building with a hall. And in that hall are people, and all those people are black. Now, black people have been standing in that hall for more than 200 years, knocking on that door. And they've been saying, please let us in. You know, we want to be with you. We want to be like you. We love you. And that door has never opened. One of the men in the hall say, you know what I think I'll do? Say, I think I will go outside, get me a brick, throw it through the window, and take some of my things out of that window, because he's never going to open the front door. And another man in that hall says that, no, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going outside, I'm going under the house, I'm going to take me a match, and I'm going to burn that house up, and everything in it, including me. And then a third man says that, wait, brothers, you know, it might become necessary to do that, but it's not become necessary yet. Said the problem is we've been standing here for 200 years knocking on that door, and he hasn't opened the door because we haven't been speaking his language. So his mother tongue is power. And that perhaps if we take all our little toothpicks of power and put them together and create a whole huge battering ram, then the door will open one way or another. I think history arranged that eventually America would have to face itself through black people or go under. And I deeply believe that this is the point we occupy now in time.
A suburb of Chicago, July 4th, this year. If you're white, try to think black. For 200 years, blacks have watched white parades roll by. For most Americans, the past itself has been white. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are the champions of American independence, but they were also slaveholders. Patrick Henry wanted liberty or death, just like Denmark Vesey and the young men in the ghettos today. But Patrick Henry was also a slaveholder. Freedom, like history, is not supposed to have a color. But when America institutionalizes freedom and history, all the symbols are white. Black America is still waiting for the parade to open its ranks and let in Frederick Douglass, Denmark Vesey, Malcolm X, and other heroes of the black fight for freedom. Frederick Douglass, the escaped slave, was once invited to celebrate July 4th with white people. He told them, "This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn." When white people celebrate black heroes, as black people have celebrated Washington and Jefferson, the battle for the past will be over. And when the past belongs to everyone, so will the present. Most black people still don't want to wreck this parade. They want to join it. In the heritage of slavery, there are plenty of heroes, just like in any other tragedy. Deep in the wasteland of Chicago's South Side, embedded like an emerald in an ash can, is an immaculate wonder called the Wall of Respect. Black artists painted black heroes on this wall, men and women willing to liberate themselves, in Malcolm X's words, by any means necessary. They are individuals who will either have respect or will die trying to get it, and some of them have. It's a long way and a lot of years from the slave market in Charleston to the Wall of Respect in Chicago. But neither distance nor time has yet entirely separated the black man from bondage. No one needs to inflame the black race against these realities. The fire of rebellion started burning a long time ago. What these travels in black America have shown is that white racism created the need for black power, just as slavery bred insurrection. If a country can be a collective noun, then America is mad at each other right now. We blacks and whites are plotting separate courses with great skill and cunning. You can't have oppression without rebellion, and you can't have either in a country that belongs to all its people. What black Americans are telling white Americans today is that this land is ours too. The plaintive question the slaves used to ask, "Am I not a man and a brother?" has been replaced by an affirmation and a challenge. "I am a man and a brother," black men are saying. And if you don't think so, then this country isn't big enough for both of us. This is George Foster at the Wall of Respect.
After all, a slave was a very valuable piece of property, and anybody with any brains at all would have kept him well clothed and well fed so that he could do his job. But of course, they didn't figure the slave really as having too much of a soul, I guess. He was more of a beast of burden, almost a very superior pet.
The heritage of slavery is what we're living through today in the Mississippi Delta, in New York, in Watts, everywhere. That's the heritage of it. I believe that.
Thomas Jefferson did say that I tremble for my country when I remember that God is just. And he was talking about slavery because he could see what would eventually happen to America. It's up to America now to deal with itself